you want me to start things?
No, that's okay. We'll just give people a couple minutes to join here.
That's what I
So are we going to actually see them on coming up? Are we going to see faces of the audience and everything? No.
Oh, we'll see them in the chat though.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mary Lou.
Alrighty, I think we're about ready to get going here. All right. Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome. I am really pleased to welcome you to the launch of Universal Disorder tonight. My name is Rachel Falley-Neufeld. I'm the event coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. I'd like to start things off by acknowledging that we're streaming from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional territory of the Cree peoples and homeland of the Métis. Like I said, I'm just really pleased to welcome you all to the virtual launch of Universal Disorder. We have Bernice Friesen here with us tonight, of course, so huge thanks to her for being here, and Freehand Books for working with us on tonight's event. And special shout out to Kelsey Attard with Freehand. She's in the background tonight. Although we're not able to gather in person, you can still purchase a copy of Universal Disorder either online or in store. And I'll drop a link to the book in the chat screen. I think it's on the right side of your screen. And we also have a special musical guest to kick off the evening, which is really exciting. Before I introduce her, I just want to let you know that there's a Q&A box on your screen. So if you have any questions for Bernice tonight, please feel free to submit them using that box at any point, and then we'll aim to get to them a little bit later on. So before we hear from Bernice, we're going to hear from Joon-Johnson. She's a singer-songwriter currently living on the wild west coast of BC. And she's wildly known in the Canadian house concert community, and her music has received several awards, including a Vancouver Island Music Award. Her fourth album, 1,000 Things, is a collection of folk-based songs, tiny stories scattered with coastal images and encounters, the recordings of which are supported by the lush string arrangements of composer Adrian Dolan. She's also a poet, with poems appearing in literary journals such as Room, Prairie Fire, CV2, and Arc. And her live shows combine music and improv poetry and are often performed in living rooms and small halls with her cellist, Jordy Robinson. But she's here with us tonight virtually, and she's going to share a couple songs with us. So I'd like to pass it off to Joon-Johnson.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this launch. Bernice Friesen is a friend of mine too, because we both live at the coast. So I thought, because this is a literary event, I would sing 2 songs tonight that are based on characters. And so this first one is about a woman who leaves her abusive husband, gets in a car and drives over the Rocky Mountains. And this is called Calgary. on your skin, on your skin. It was the radio playing a broken-hearted little tune. I packed my bags in the dreary afternoon. Goodbye, baby. It's too soon for you to tell, but I've learned my lesson well. I'll wait and see. Next time you think of me, I'll be halfway down the road to Calgary. And now I'm pulling onto the highway, yeah, and the trees are blurring by. And I hate to say it, but there's not one cloud left in the sky. Goodbye, baby. It's too soon for you to tell, but I've learned my lesson well. I'll wait and see. Next time you think of me, I'll be halfway down the road to Calgary. Thank you. I've done a couple of these Zoom concerts before, and it's very strange. Just, the song ends and it's just silent. But I'm getting used to it. This one is another character song. This one is about a woman who is an agoraphobic, and it's called Hillary. As the seasons come and go, watch spring turn to summer, summer to autumn, then to winter cold. And I watch the smoke trails from the chimneys up and down our road. My lover used to light the fire while I cooked at the stove. I watched from the window, first green of leaves on all the trees. Watch kids with their coats off, people out walking in the streets. I know what time the school lets out, and when the buses go. I used to put the kettle on when I heard him get home. Everybody knows the days they come and go, but some of them go so slow. So I pour me a glass full. It helps with the sorrow and the ache. from twilight into day. Sometimes I wake in the dead of the night and stare out at the dark. My lover used to find me here and take me in his arms. Everybody knows the days they come and go. Everybody knows the days they come and go. But some of them go so slow. Thank you.
Wow, I have goosebumps. Thank you so much. That was really gorgeous. So we don't forget to check out Kim Joon-Johnson's website. It's just www.kimjoonjohnson.com. So again, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. She's going to pop back in a little bit later to chat with Bernice. But before that, Bernice is going to read from Universal Disorder, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about her. Bernice Friesen was born in Saskatchewan, and the life of her grandmother's family has been published in The Mulberry Tree by Victor Carl Friesen and Anna Friesen. She trained as a visual artist, then turned to writing, has taught through Sage Hill Writing Experience, and is a past editor of Rhubarb magazine. The title story of her first book, The Seasons Are Horses, won the Vicky Metcalf Award for Best Young Adult Short Story in Canada. And her book of poetry, Sex, Death, and Naked Men, was described in Prairie Fire as ferocious feminist verse that chews up the patriarchs of Western civilization, from Freud to Plato to the Pope, and spits them out. Her first novel, The Book of Beasts, was shortlisted for the Writers' Trust Fiction Prize. And she is, of course, here with us tonight to tell you a bit more about universal disorder. So welcome, Bernice. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. In mathematics, which is to say, nature itself, certain numbers appear repeatedly. No one knows why. Mathematicians call them magic numbers. Universal Disorder, Chapter 0. 3247749. What a thing to appear on his call display, a ghost calling. 9, he says, as if he's able to stand behind her in the street and whisper her names. Seraphina, little angel. J, as if he could reach out and smooth his thumb up through her hair, the soft crew cut revealing the blue fleur-de-lis tattooed on the back of her scalp. Imagine the system that gave it to her without knowing how exquisite it was. The first 3 digits add up to 9, the last 4 to 27, and 2 plus 7 is 9, so the whole number is divisible by 9. 9 is so beautiful, so neatly 3 threes, the first truly odd number, the first oddity, other than 1, I, me, myself, that self-obsessed simpleton. But it can't be. She must have given up that number shortly after he measured the space-time between his skin and hers and found the distance unbearable. 10 years ago, calling. Really? How old is he? He walks to the bathroom and lifts his heavy gaze to the mirror as if he's moving through water. Only the eyes are familiar, a blue of too much depth, staring through a nebulous tangle of hair. The stranger in the mirror lifts his hands. It's terrifying to feel those hands on his face. He is the ghost, the shattered one. These eyes, these hands, these feet that managed to stumble out of the psych ward. 10 years ago, when he lost her, he lost himself. Hi, everyone. So this is a novel about obsession and about an obsessive character named Charlie. For the next 100 pages, I go back to Charlie's childhood, but I'm going to be skipping that in this short reading and go straight on with his obsession. And much in this book was inspired by my father, and it's dedicated to my father and two of my oldest friends. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Lorraine. And these two women are also sort of its unsung heroes. So we're going to skip all of Charlie's childhood, and we're going to go straight to kind of the middle when he's just starting to get to know the woman he's obsessed with, Jay. Now, this is when he's doing his PhD in astrophysics, and he's in Montreal, and Jay is in art school in Montreal, and he's not fitting in with her friends, Dom and Tamsin. And so he's sort of encountering this art school milieu. So the first line in this starts, after the night of the Jello thing. And you'll just have to trust me, that's a long story. I won't be going into that. After the night of the Jello thing, final exams came, and Jay vanished for the summer to live with her mother on Vancouver Island and work at some hotel on the shore. It was 4 excruciating months before he saw her again and found out she and her friends hung out in the printmaking studio, that holy hellish place where Jay's pale hands got stained with ink. Lithography, silkscreen, etching, a labyrinth of black iron printing presses and skull and crossbone signs, poisons and explosives, acids and carcinogens. He started dropping by whenever he had an hour to spare. At the end of September, he followed her to the first art school party of the year. This is it, Tamsin said, and they stared at the huge house, its arched windows and cast iron urns full of dead flowers. The clouds boiled above it, lit a lurid orange by the city. You know, Dom said, I think this is Hurricane What's-It blown up from North Carolina. Oh my God, with the sky like that, it's like a horror movie, Jay said. The girls were like a horror movie too. Jay was wearing jean cutoffs with black fishnets again. Her tuxedo jacket was now painted with psychedelic orange and turquoise swirls, and her mohawk was longer, higher, and was vaguely purple. The dark one was in her leather IUD coat, her bat black hair ironed flat. Charlie had waited in the printmaking studio while the girls did their zombie makeup in the bathroom and came out smelling of pot. Dom rolled his eyes when he saw them and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the strangest one of all?" At least Dom was dressed like a normal human being and hadn't let the girls put eyeshadow on him. No, not horror movie. That sky, straight 19th century German romanticism. Caspar David Friedrich, Dom exclaimed, his Quebecois flavored English becoming stronger with every beer. It's sublime. Could you lean down again, Dr. Quantum Entanglement? Charlie leaned and Dom fished another beer out of the box on his shoulder. So sublime, it makes you want to yawn. Tamsin rolled her eyes and put her black-nailed hand over her mouth. Dom yawned, and then Jay, and then Charlie succumbed because it was already almost midnight. Jerome lives in this barn, Jay exclaimed. He dresses like he lives in his car. And that's how he paints too, Tamsin snarled, licking her teeth, enjoying the taste of nasty in her mouth. Her low thrusting voice was full of whispers, growls, fucking this and fucking that, and superiority. She had a way of gathering her hair in both fists against her collarbone and twisting it as she questioned people. Once, after he started hanging around the printmaking studio, she'd asked Charlie what his story was, and he'd looked up from a page of numbers, unready to enter the four-dimensional world. Did he have a story? Dom glanced around at the other huge houses. This is worse than the suburbs. Charlie had learned that suburban was one of the worst art school insults, alongside sofa painting and Philistine, which meant anybody who didn't understand art, which meant him. So this is a big party in a big house, lots of art students, and Charlie actually loses Jay and her friends for a little while at the party and has a couple of adventures on his own. And then I'll start a little bit further on. It was a long time before he finally found Jay and Dom in the basement rec room. A TV was playing music videos at odds with the toom, toom, toom that was throbbing from upstairs. A few people sagged here and there, stoned or making out on the couches. A girl lying on the floor was shining her keychain flashlight at the ceiling, whirling circles and ellipses, waving an invisible stick tipped with a glowing ember. Jay and Dom were huddled on the floor against a couch. She was crying. Charlie dropped to the floor near her. I just had a CAT scan. It's still my danger period and I'm freaking. I didn't know. I didn't tell you. Charlie gripped the shag carpet, Jay sobbing, smearing her tears and makeup across her temples with both hands, Dom gathering her into his arms. I stopped telling. People give you the cancer look, like you're pitiful. People I barely knew showed up, tourists gawping. So this is young cancer. I wasn't dead yet. I was this lesson, this thing. Use every moment God gives you shit. Charlie stared into Jay's wild animal eyes. How could she seem so happy? And stop it, stop looking. He looked away, everywhere equally meaningless. Tamsin suddenly appeared and got down on her knees beside Jay, who was gusting out words. I had radiation here. She put her hand beneath her left arm, beside her heart. The skin's never supposed to see the sun. And chemo, bleomycin, vinblastine, domperidone, the champagne of anti-nausea drugs, and the shit they flushed my portacath with. Heparin, rat poison. You really want to know what rat poison tastes like, seeping out of your blood, out of your tongue? Sweetie, Dom crooned, trying to trap her hands. This girl I knew in chemo, they killed off her bone marrow and made her go blind, then deaf. Oh, just temporary side effects, they said. But then she died. Yeah. More people flowed into the room, taking up the air, thickening the smoke. He and Dom and Tamsin were paralyzed at the bottom of a depth of legs and bodies, Jay gasping. Charlie got to his feet, pressed back, and made space for her to breathe, his eyes on her hands, claws that dug into her black fishnet legs. Dom started coughing, hacking. He breathed through an inhaler, but couldn't stop coughing. He stood up. I'm the asthma, he choked out. Jay got up. You need to go? He nodded. and they all pushed up the stairs into the tomb, and spilled out of the house with the smoke and a splash of light. The autumn had been slow and warm, the crowns of the trees heavy, red and orange and yellow, lit from beneath by windows and street lights. The dark road curved down and away, a dry riverbed bouldered with parked cars. A sudden wind gusted and leaves began to pour off the trees. "Oh my God, it's beautiful," Jay shouted, lifting her arms. "It's a waterfall, colorful." She started to laugh, her face still wet, the pot, the beer, the tune. Dawn put a cautious hand on her shoulder, but she wrenched away. "Come on," she shrieked, and then she ran, Tamsin close behind her. "Go after her," Dom shouted, coughing, but Charlie was already running in the night wind, the street full of leaves streaming, clattering, 100,000 paper horses from a tiny apocalypse. So that's what I was going to read to you today. And yeah, that's about 15 minutes. So hi, Kim, you were going to ask me a few questions. And hi, everybody out there. And I saw you, Anita, there. You're all the way from Montreal. That's pretty thrilling. And yeah, hi, Sherry. I'm so glad you could be here.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I got this book last week and I've been madly reading it, and I have not wanted to put it down. So first of all, I wanted to pay you a compliment and just say that the language is just so dense and gorgeous, as you all just heard in what Bernice read. And there's little bits of poetry spread throughout that is just so delightful. But what I was admiring as I was reading it is that you don't allow the beautiful language to distract from a very gripping plot. And I wondered if you could say what you, as a writer, what draws you more? Is it plot or is it language?
I've thought I was a novelist since the age of 12. And, you know, your tools and the medium that you work with are words and language. So I think you sort of fall in love with them, and sometimes you fall in love with them too much. But I'm a believer in the fictional dream, and the way that I consciously choose to build my fictional dream is that I see language and the words on the page as the door that you use to get into the room of the book. So it's got to be a door that's easy to open, and it's got to be, you can't really notice it. You can't stumble on your way in. You can't have trouble going in or unlocking it, or you can't really notice it. You have to just suddenly be in the room and be in the story. And so, I mean, I love, you know, I get very attached to some of the beautiful language, but it's got to serve the fictional dream and being in that room that is this world that you create.
Well, I think that you were really successful at doing that in this book. Universal Disorder explores themes of neurodivergence and mental chaos, and Charlie's profound intellectual brilliance is a big theme. As a writer, why did you feel like those were themes that you wanted to explore?
I come from a family that has a lot of strange and interesting minds. I'm not the only writer in the family. There are engineers, and there's number nerds, and all kinds of things. And sometimes it almost seems as if we're kind of divided by sort of the the male and female sides of the brain. And when I started this book, it was actually part of a different book, and it became 2 books. And this was the book that ended up being all about science and all about numbers. And my father was very much an inventor. And the engineering side of my family was sort of the male side of my family. And so it got me an opportunity to stretch that side of my brain. And, I started reading New Scientist and Scientific American, and I just geeked right out, and I changed myself. That's the exciting thing about writing a book and thinking so profoundly for such a very long time about some area of thought that wasn't your place before.
All is well. The dog just walked in and knocked over something, but it's okay. Sorry about that. So the numbers thing that it wasn't that something that was it something that came naturally to you, or was it something that you had to do a bit of research on?
Well, I definitely had to research the numbers and the physics and the astrophysics. And I wasn't really interested in numbers when I was growing up. I could do math, but I didn't find it nearly as exciting as, how you can get so many right answers when you're doing art or when you're doing writing. But with math, you can only get one right answer. But it's sort of puzzles and games it is. I did crack a textbook on quantum mechanics and read the first line and laughed uproariously and threw it aside. So yeah, some of it, it's hard to think about this stuff just coming cold to it. It's like building that room again, and you get a piece of information, but you've got nowhere to hang it. You've got to build up these walls and hang up all this information, and it was really fun. And
yeah, I thought you did a really great job of making that sound really natural, and not forced. So yeah, well done with that part. With everything, actually. Charlie is, especially as an adult, a little bit as a kid, but very much as an adult, is very traumatized, and he's kind of a disturbed character. And reading it, I found it so compelling and interesting and gripping. But as a writer, what I wondered is, did you find it hard to inhabit that space that Charlie inhabits in order to portray his character?
Do you know, I didn't really, because Charlie is also a lot of fun. And even in his darkest moments, he doesn't take himself too seriously. You'll find him, telling jokes on himself to himself, even at his lowest point. And my characters really are alive to me. And I just like them. So I could spend all kinds of time with him,
The story is told in third person from the perspective of Charlie. And what I found was that his voice and his persona was so strong and vivid, both as a child and as an adult. And I wondered if you could speak to what has influenced you as a writer in finding your own voice, I suppose, and then more specifically to how you connected so well with the voice and the persona of your characters in this book.
That's a really tough question, because I guess when I started off, I was writing short stories in a young adult voice, and it was sort of a blossoming of myself in various voices, in various guises, and also various disguises. And as a writer, you really can write only to a certain extent out of yourself, because you don't feel anybody else's emotions. And so to a certain extent, you have to find yourself in every single character, but to the most part, you have to find yourself in your main character, because you have to help the reader to find him or herself in the main character as well. Because the main character of the book is the reader in a way. So if you've got to make that character inhabitable. So yeah, it's how to find my voice. I don't know. I'd say that would be my answer.
Yeah. Well, I just thought you did such a wonderful job of making his voice and his persona alive, and I really admired that about the book. We have some time to get some questions from the audience now, so I think that Rachel's going to send some to me in the messages, and I'm going to communicate them to you.
Hey, I'd love to talk to everybody in the chat room here, but I'm on too much adrenaline right now, and too much has gone on.
Rachel, I'm not seeing any questions. I'm just seeing a lot of comments. Did you want to maybe pop on and communicate some of the audience questions?
Ooh.
Sorry, folks. All right. We had a question here from Jerry Hill, who was wondering how much reading / speaking aloud do you do when you're writing? So how much reading or speaking aloud do you do when you're writing?
Well, let's see. I actually, toward the very end, I am when I'm editing, I am I read the book aloud to myself, or I whisper it aloud to myself a couple of times, the whole thing all the way through, which my children thinks very odd, because language was first spoken. And so it's not necessarily that you can hear the language better, but hi Jerry, you can actually feel it in your mouth better as you're speaking it, whether it's going to flow better than whether you could see it on the page. So toward the end, it's very, very important. And I think periodically throughout, but it's hard to say how much I'm hearing it internally as well.
Mm-hmm. So from Michael Lalonde, we have, do you think your book will appeal to both nerd and common folk like myself?
I hope so. I think common folk are common nerds as well, and nerd folk are pretty much everybody's human. And I mean, I did make a foray into that because I ventured into becoming dungeon master for my teenage son, so he could invite his friends over for Dungeons and Dragons, and I'd never played the game myself. So that was very odd, but oddly satisfying, especially when I could arrange to have one of his more annoying friends swallowed whole by a giant toad. So nerdness can be learned as well.
And we've got a question from Kelsey. Can you tell us a bit about the sleeve you're wearing and how it relates to the book?
Oh, okay. So there's various parts of this book that I used my own experiences and fictionalized them. And the character Jay has the same kind of cancer that I had 15 years ago. And having done visual art first, and still liking to work with my hands, and liking to solve various problems if I can. After I had cancer, I had a problem in actually wearing clothes because yes, I had radiation treatment over here. And so this part of my body, just like Jay's, is not allowed to see the sun. And so after I had cancer treatment, I was actually quite afraid, as you can imagine. And so I was always having to wear a shirt to cover up. I felt like I was hiding. I felt like I was afraid. And in the hot weather in Saskatchewan, you want to wear something sleeveless a dress or something like that, and I wasn't able to. And I did. I felt like I was hiding in a burrow or something. And so I made some shoulder armor. So this is my fancier version. It's the second one that I made. And so it's just a secondhand shirt, kind of chopped up, and a chain belt. And I actually used one of my grandmother's crocheted antimacassars. I've got a lot of my mother's and my grandmother's crochet work that I've saved. The only kind of art that women were really allowed to do way back when. And so it's I call it sun armor, but when I go out under the sun now, I feel powerful instead of afraid. Yes, I feel armored. And it's nice and airy. If you don't like the term sun armor, a less flattering way of saying it is this is an armpit hat. But the leather cuff is actually from the face of a Mexican hand-tooled purse that I got secondhand for $2. So that can actually be removed for washing. But yeah, it's quite fun. So yeah, I still mess around with that sort of thing. And yeah, it's fun to see people, give it the eye in the street. And some people will ask me about it, and some people will not ask me about it. So
Beautiful. I think you'll have to trademark armpit hat at some point. So we have a question from Deborah Willis with Freehand Books. And she says, I was struck when working with you by what a pro you are when it comes to revision. You managed to change the book without ever losing your voice and vision. Any tips for other writers in the middle of novel revisions?
Well, I would say that some of your best writing is actually revision. And that somehow making the novel taste better toward the very end. You're not working with the raw clay anymore. You're refining it, and you're using the fine tools. And I've described it more as a symphony kind of, and you're getting it more in tune, and you're making it sound better. And it's more thrilling than I find. So it's to me, it's a matter of enjoyment, but I suppose that could be a personal thing.
So I think that was the last question, but if anyone's got a straggler here, oh, here we go. So Robert Martins has a follow-up to that question. Is it possible to overwrite?
Yeah, you can write too much. I suppose I'm not really sure what you mean by overwriting. You can write too much, and I fortunately have had good editors that told me this book needs to be 50 pages less. I think at some point early on, I chose a certain balance that I wanted. That when I'm writing a paragraph, or when I'm trying to describe something, I would choose to have, a single vivid image rather than 3 images that are competing with each other. So it's but I mean, the Victorians thought completely differently. So I think if overwriting is wealth as well. And some writers suffer from writer's block. And if you have an abundance of writing, that's great. Stick a file on your computer and mark it, writing for I don't know what yet, and put it in for later.
Awesome. So Robert follows up by asking, where did it go? The overwriting, in reference to the editing. Does that make sense?
Oh, I mean, overworking it as far as sort of
Yeah.
deadening it. Um, well, I suppose if you were getting bad advice from an editor and taking it too much to heart, you know, that would be there. I have heard also that in you know, so many people are doing MFAs and having such large many books going through workshops all the time. So everything was starting to sound the same and workshoppy, and people were losing their individual sense of style. So I suppose that's possible. I think I seem to know when I like what I'm doing. I seem to know that when I'm changing something and it's better, I seem to know. So I don't know. Some sort of instinct tells me or something. So I can't be more specific than that. But yeah, I'm not saying it can't happen, and you shouldn't watch out for it. But
So Bernice, I think we have time for one more question here. This one's from Michael Lalonde, and he asks, how did you decide on your title, and what was the evolution, if any?
Well, there's a bunch of titles that I started with. The first one was Dark Matter. Of course, that's in astrophysics. And Island Universe was one that I was working on as well. And it spoke to Charlie's individual isolation. But it sort of sounded a little bit too much like a science fiction book. And so Universal Disorder, I like that quite a lot because it has a reference in it to entropy, to the Newton's second law of thermodynamics, how everything sort of falls apart instead of sticks itself back together like that glass you knock off the shelf. But again, that's just a human judgment. Human beings would rather have the nice glass they can drink water out of rather than a mess of glass and water on the floor. And disorder as well. My character has a lot of mental disorders. And of course, it refers also to the universal disorder of people not knowing how to love each other well. That's something that we all have to learn about all through our lives. So I did finally, prodded by my editors, I did finally come up with what was the right name, Universal Disorder, I think. Thank you. Thanks, Kelsey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bernice. So I think we're going to wrap up here, but I wanted to pass it back to you before we do that.
Yes. I wanted to thank my editors and my agent, Stephanie Sinclair. And I wanted to just look back here because I wanted to make sure I thanked the people in the Saskatoon branch of the Royal Astronomical Society. I had a great time with them after I bought my telescope and even before that. And I wanted also to thank the people of the unceded land of the Comox First Nations, including the Southlut, Sisitla, Leekson, Coolidge, Chiche, Tapus people, where I now make my home. And many thanks to the nations of Treaty 6, where I grew up, the traditional territory of Cree peoples and the homeland of the Métis Nation. So I can't tell the story of the Cree and Métis kids I grew up with, but I can tell the story of people who shared the 70 and 80 settler ignorance of the trauma inflicted by the invasion of the Americas and the residential schools and the furthering of these crimes by settler culture. So the world was a different place than the one I thought that I lived in as a child. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming and your comments. I'm going to read all of them.
Thank you so much, Bernice. Like I mentioned before, although we can't meet in person, please make sure that you pick up a copy of Universal Disorder by Bernice Friesen. I'd like to also thank Joon-Johnson for sharing her music and chatting with Bernice. That was beautiful. So make sure you also check out her website at kimjoonjohnson.com. And as well, huge thanks to all the great folks at Freehand Books for working with us on this event. And in the abrupt fashion of virtual events, I hope you all have a great evening. And thanks again for tuning in. Congratulations, Bernice.
Thank you.